But even in the specialty market, you're up against packages internationally who are able to sometimes bring serious money to the table. How do you yourself get into the MG market if you're perhaps more at the traditional end at this point of the sales agenting? Do you have associations, relationships, partnerships that enable you to...
Yes, we do. I mean, I think it's about being fleet of foot, which I think is something one of the other guys said, maybe Peter, and riding your luck and jumping on opportunities. I mean, we're handling a film at the moment called I Am Love, which is coming out on the 9th of April. Tilda Swinton's starring in it. And it was a movie, it's one of those sort of rare gems that was available completed. And it screened in Venice, and there were some very good reviews. I wasn't in Venice, none of my team was there. But one of my acquisitions guys read the reviews and said, look, this film is available and it's screening in Toronto, you should check it out. And I sort of thought and said immediately, we can't wait until Toronto because the competition is likely to be fiercer there. Let's see it now and sell it in Toronto. And I had a relationship with the producer, and I called him up and said, you're crazy to wait. Send me a screener, I'll look at it and make a quick decision. And we negotiated the deal, closed the deal, signed a deal memo 3 hours before the first screening in Toronto, and then sold the shit out of it. And it was like the good old days, a bun fight and people paying over the asking prices and us changing the prices as we went along. And it was wonderful,
Except you triggered the feeding frenzy this time. Yes.
We contributed to that, but the film was fabulous, and we were able to move quickly. We presented a sort of a sales proposal to the filmmakers that they loved. We pitched very hard for it. We had the benefit of having a very good relationship with James Atherton's Quickfire, so we were able to deploy some of his money, and he's a fund that's very easy to deal with, and so the process was very quick. We were able to move very, very quickly.
So how does the deal with Quickfire work? Are they backing up MG's?
There is no deal with Quickfire. We have a very close. It's a film by film thing. We have a very good working relationship with them and have done a number of films with them, but there's no exclusivity or anything like that, but they're just a very, I guess like us, they're very light on their feet and can make quick decisions and back them very quickly with their money.
And I think there's also an interesting aspect of your operation, which is although you're moving, you would like to move towards, in part towards more the commercial mainstream, you can also spot an opportunity in something that would not necessarily obviously be intuitively a moneymaker. Your first pickup was it was a documentary.
It was The Cove, and it won the Oscar, and that was our sort of second 2 years in a row. I do think that commerce is a broad term, and I saw that documentary, and not many people have seen it, to be honest. I can't imagine that many of you have seen the film. It wasn't a big success theatrically, but it was a very good sales success. But I was in a screening that had people stamping their feet and cheering and booing and hissing, and I felt, it reminded me of being at the flicks when I was a kid, where you really sort of interacted with the film. And I thought that has to be worth something, that reaction that I had, and again moved quickly, and we picked that up in the middle of Sundance.
And you've touched on something important, I think, which is in some cases a producer, for example, would rather see tender love and care in the shape of a decent marketing plan that makes sense relative to the film, rather than necessarily the highest bidder.
I think that's true. I mean,
again and again,
agents who are representing films clearly just want the best deal and the best money up front, but filmmakers are obviously involved in that process, and they do want to feel that they're selling the film to someone who gets it. And I think if you talk about it in the right way and appear to have the right kind of enthusiasm, they're going to trust you with their baby. And if you're competing at the same level as someone else's financial bid, but you present a plan or a passion for it that is stronger than your competitor, then I think you have a good chance. And I think that's something that we do well. We pitch very hard for films that we like, and do fairly elaborate sort of marketing strategy proposals that we give to producers, and they really appreciate that.
Thank you. I had one question, I suppose, for you all, and then we'll see whether Fiona allows me a bit of time for a couple of questions before we close. But I think Peter was talking to me yesterday, and in a way what I heard was that in your case, with a low-budget experimental end, in a way, what you were saying was sensibility trumps nationality, and that the territoriality of licensing is actually more of an inhibitory factor at your end of the business, because of course, David or Carl, it's absolutely essential for the pre-sale architecture which underpins your business that you have territorial licensing clearly kind of boundaried and delineated. So how do you square that particular circle? Yeah, first, why not?
I don't think you do. No, it's a tricky thing. I think that if you look at sort of typical warp buyers, whether it's of films or of music, there are national aspects to their habits and there are transnational aspects to their habits. I think that there are two factors there. One of them is that if you're going in, however well a local distributor knows the territory, if they are marketing to people along classic film lines, they're not necessarily picking up an audience that will respond to something because it's warp rather than because it's a film, if you see what I mean. So you may still want expertise on the ground, but you don't necessarily want the same sort of expertise on the ground. That's one aspect. The other aspect is just simply one of scale. That just as at the top end, look at what's happening in Europe with the sort of the rise of mini studios, multi-territory deals again, is people are figuring out that the only way to really monetize big films is to effectively have direct distribution into a number of territories. The same applies at the bottom end. If you're making films now where, somebody said to me the other day, £1 million, that's quite a big budget for the UK. And it's sort of sadly true. That used to be, when we started Warpax, that was low budget, and now people think of low budget as 100,000, which is a whole different story. But if you're going to make films at those sorts of figures work, you cannot afford to have 30% going to somebody, 30% going to somebody else, all of those things, unless it's the sort of thing that can be mass marketed, so you're reliant on those companies to do, to put in a big marketing spend and recoup that marketing spend. To a large extent, you've got to go it alone. And with brands like Warp, with brands like Vice, with those sort of, there are now ways of reaching audiences more directly, and of those audiences engaging directly. And so we're finding with the stuff that we're doing at the lower end that we're having to make those choices about, do we go the conventional route, for want of a better word, or do we go the other route? And they're very difficult to mix for obvious reasons.
Thank you.